Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Is that good? Good? Not too? Okay. So the title of my remarks, the 2 most important days of your life. Good evening. I'm absolutely thrilled and humbled to have a chance to address you. And I've chosen this quote to weave my story around. I think Mark Twain was trying to be funny when he said the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And I've been reflecting on this, the day you found out why, for a couple of weeks. And I think I'm starting to get it. If we're really blessed, there are many days when we find out why. For Mrs. Irene Oberlin, one of those days occurred in 1953. She was watching a TV show, and she saw the needs of an orphanage in Incheon, Korea, and she rallied her friends. And remarkably, in the 64 years that have passed, volunteers, hospitals, companies, healthcare workers, universities, all of that movement was started by that one moment, that one I found out why moment that Irene had in 1953? Martin Luther King said this: every man and woman must decide if he or she will walk in the creative light of altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment, life's persistent and most important and urgent question. What are you doing for others? Over 64 years, after Irene and scores of volunteers would find out why, here we are again, in the midst of a movement. You and I are part of that movement. Just a single brief moment from a TV show led to all of this. I'm sure she had some questions in her mind. Am I prepared to invest my time, my resources? Will I call on friends? Am I prepared to take on obstacles, cajole people in power, senators, for example, television personalities? Am I prepared to approach donors? Am I prepared to make a lifetime commitment? How do I convince my husband and family? Our garage is full of supplies. How do I do that? She had such a depth of conviction on that moment that it was like a conversion. I found out why moment that led to this entire movement. A single housewife watching a TV show. So my journey with World Medical had a far less dramatic start. But it's a moment I'll never forget. About 7 years ago, Tom, something like that, one of our cardiology fellows came to my office and asked for a little bit of my time. He came with a very unusual story. 3 weeks before, he and one of our faculty members had placed a pacemaker in a woman who had a terribly slow heart rate. And they did that, and unfortunately, over the next 2 weeks, this woman's heart progressively failed, and she passed. In order to meet her wishes for cremation, the husband arranged for that. And with cremation, I'm told that pacemakers can blow up during the process. They have to be removed. So her husband got her pacemaker and showed up in our pacemaker clinic searching for Tamir Bauman. So that was the first key moment in Project My Heart, Your Heart. A husband who's just lost a wife of 50 years thinking to himself, what will I do with her pacemaker? Will I leave it at the crematory? Will I ask them to send it back to the manufacturer? What on earth should I do with this? Emerson said, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. That is to have succeeded. This guy took that essentially brand new pacemaker, showed up in our clinic, found our cardiology fellow, and handed him the device saying, please, my wife and I would like to donate this to somebody someplace who needs it and can't afford it. So Tamir had a second key moment in the Project My Heart journey, and that is, what on earth do I do now? And like many trainees, he went to one of his teachers, showed up in my office and said, what do we do now? I told her I would try to help. I told him I would try to help. So we started. I suggested to Tamir that we should study this very carefully. We knew that pacemaker recycling had been done by a number of countries many years ago, and it stopped. We weren't sure why. I didn't know why it stopped. We wanted to study whether the general public, pacemaker recipients, people who implant devices, did they favor this? Because this was going to be a big deal. If the prevailing opinion was this is a bad idea, then maybe it's a bad idea. But it wasn't. Each of the groups we talked to thought it was a great idea. I also told Tamir that we were going to need an outstanding global charity to work with in order to make this happen. I also told him we'd need a really good lawyer. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, I knew that pacemaker recycling was illegal. Completely illegal. We would have to do it just the right way, the Michigan way. So that was one of my I found out why moments 7 years ago. In the years that have followed, a lot's happened. And I want to tell you about some of those stories. First, there's an African proverb that goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. Over the 60-plus years that pacemakers have been implanted, there have been individual physicians recycling pacemakers in their own hospitals, sterilizing, and then going back to their native countries and placing those devices in people in need in the countries they were born in. Several of those individuals worked with World Medical, Dr. Romero, Dr. Machado. He was here. I don't know if he's still here, but he has been doing this in Nicaragua for a long time. These are the quiet heroes who have been saving lives for years and years and years. I want to celebrate them. I want to celebrate the quiet heroes all over the world who do this. But we wanted to do this in a more systematic way. We wanted to create momentum so that pacemaker recycling would not have to be done in the dark, but it could be done in the light. We wanted to create a roadmap for how this could happen. One of the most remarkable moments in the journey was when Tamir came back to me just 2 weeks after we talked, and he had studied what had gone on. He said, you know, Kim, this is doable. This was being done from Finland and Canada and Sweden. It's safe. He also said something that I found amazing. He said, you know, I found a global charity that's only 30 miles away. I said, you gotta be kidding. What in the hell is the name of that? He said, World Medical Relief. I couldn't believe it. I believe it now. So, if I don't make you laugh, I'm not successful. So I'm going to interrupt my sort of serious remarks with a few moments of levity. Thomas Crawford got an email not too many years ago from a woman in Las Vegas. And she wanted to know if we could donate one of our My Heart, Your Heart pacemakers for her dog. This is awkward, right? I mean, we had this idea that wherever we put in devices, we should go and make sure that the person getting the device needs it and that they have a financial situation that merits it. So how am I going to send Dr. Crawford to Vegas to check out this dog? And I think I suggested that you do whatever you thought was best, and whatever you did, don't let me know about it. And I think Fido may still be with us, I'm not sure. So we've published papers on the beliefs and attitudes of patients, funeral home directors, crematory directors, doctors. They all favor this notion. We think there are more than 1 million people a year who drop dead in this world for lack of a pacemaker. We also know that there are thousands of devices sitting in buckets in funeral homes and crematories, waiting for a transporter, an angel of mercy, to take them home. That is what Project My Heart, Your Heart is doing. We're turning the sins of waste into the miracles of mercy. Right, George? So we've worked hard. We've worked hard. George. So we've published papers on how you properly remove, analyze, sterilize, and repackage pacemakers. Dr. Crawford and Dr. Bauman have led small studies of patients in various countries where we put in devices, and it works, and it's safe. We've developed a system to test devices so that when we recycle a pacemaker, we can test it and make sure it will react to the conditions the human body may go through that require this pacemaker to function well. We have a partnership with implant recycling. And if you go to World Medical Relief on Monday, you'll see that we've received over 25,000 pacemakers so far. We have an international partnership with the Pan-African Cardiac Society. There's a hospital in South Africa that's agreed to train people how to put in pacemakers, physicians. You see, there are many countries in Africa where there are no pacemaker laboratories at all. Patients in those countries either have means to go somewhere else, or they simply pass quietly away. We've received FDA approval to do a randomized trial comparing our used devices to new devices. We already know what this will show, that it's safe and effective. But when we publish that trial and prove it to the world, that recycling can be done in a perfectly legitimate way, we believe we'll knock the top off this bottle, this genie bottle that's been thrust down. We're working with World Medical Relief to create what we believe will be the first pacemaker recycling center in the entire world. We've distributed compassionate use devices in many countries: Haiti, the Philippines, Nicaragua, Pakistan, Ghana, Bolivia, Vietnam, and others. When there's a crisis, we try to respond. We've created a database in our outcomes research laboratory so that we can track devices, because if you should get a used device and the company recalls it because it's faulty, we're going to have to be able to find those devices, if we can, and offer them a second device that isn't faulty. We've expanded our partnership. It includes engineers, infectious disease doctors, legal experts, ethical experts, health systems, universities, pacemaker companies, funeral home directors, professional societies. If you want to go far, go with others. We've come so far. It hasn't been fast, but it's been careful. We believe that we're on the verge of a fail-safe roadmap to recycle pacemakers in the entire world. This would not have been possible without the support of many people, and especially you, the friends, contributors, volunteers of World Medical Relief. So a little levity. A nurse a few years ago came rushing to my office and she said, "Dr. Eagle, there's a package and it's been distributed at a desk over on the other side of the first floor of the Cardiovascular Center. And honest to God, I think it's a bomb. I said, oh, that's really unfortunate. I'm glad it didn't get delivered to my office. But, well, actually, it was a manila envelope containing about 30 pacemakers. And these things, when they get near the end of life, they actually beep. And it wasn't really ticking, but it was beeping. And she thought maybe I was going to be attacked by some person who wanted me to be off the planet. So who do I have to thank? A patient's grieving husband, Tamir Bauman, who had the courage to take a step. Tom Crawford, sitting here, who took over My Heart, Your Heart from Tamir 4 years ago. Tom, you're his heart and soul. George Sampson. I'm sure George knew that this was illegal. But he also knew it's the right thing to do. So George, my respect for you grows every day. Brad Wasserman of Implant Recycling, he's helped us create this huge supply. The Cardiovascular Center, we invested resources and space to start this little project. We have a nurse named Pat Sovich who has been the lion's share of collecting the devices for us. Kevin Weatherax, who's not here, helped us get this through the FDA. Eva Klein-Rogers and our whole team, Eric Pearl, Patsy Bruner, I think she's there. That's the MCorp team. You should stand up. These people are making this happen. We have an engineer named Noah Klugman who's helping us design the machinery we need to make sure the devices work every time. Ed Goldman, our lawyer, who's kept me out of jail so far. And I have to thank a couple who are here, Sheldon and Marion Davis. Sheldon and Marion. Your continued investment in this dream has made it possible. And I'd like to tell you tonight that we've decided that we will name the first pacemaker recycling center in the world after the two of you. A third moment of levity, perhaps. I've got to make you laugh before I leave. So a few years ago, Sheldon suggested that I should write to the vice president of Medtronic and let him know about our work and let him know about a study that we were going to be presenting at one of the big meetings. And we did that. I didn't hear from him. But one of my friends actually then sent me an email saying, you know, Kim, you're on the front page of the Minneapolis Star, and it ain't good. You see, the vice president of Medtronic has stated that there's this crazy guy in Michigan, Kim Eagle, who's trying to recycle pacemakers, and everybody knows they're only for single use. And I thanked my friend for letting me know about that. I don't mind being on the front page if it's for a reason like that. But this is just the start, okay? Winston Churchill at the end of the war said, this is not the end. It's the end of the beginning. So I want you to commit with me tonight that we will not rest until pacemaker recycling is a reality. Who said it? I have miles to go before I sleep. I have some miles to go. But when I sleep, I want to be sure pacemaker recycling is happening routinely in the world. And a significant fraction of that 1 million humans is saved. But I really want you to dream bigger, okay? I want you to think much bigger. Irene Oberlin did. What if in 5 years, your public hospital in a low-income country gets a box that says, Project My Heart, Your Heart, delivered to you by World Medical Relief? What if it contains the pacemakers and leads you'll need for that year? What if it also contains the 4 medications that patients should take after a heart attack that reduces their risk of another heart attack by at least 50%? Most patients in those hospitals get no treatment after they leave the hospital. What if it contains some blood pressure cuffs? Only half the people in the world who have high blood pressure know about it, and only 1/7 have their blood pressure controlled. What if it contained some hand crank defibrillators? Because you know the power goes out in some of those hospitals, and if the power goes out, the defibrillator doesn't work. We're working with engineers in India who've designed a hand crank defibrillator. In 12 seconds, you can get a little exercise and shock a patient back to life. Amazing. Amazing. I got a letter from a patient. It said, Dear Dr. Eagle, I'm blessed to be helped by your humanitarian and godly efforts, which gave me hope and life. Truly, I now have a happy life because you made me feel loved even though you didn't know me. She had 3 kids. She was the breadwinner. She spent 3 months on a temporary pacemaker in a hospital. They sold the house. They tried to raise money to get her a pacemaker. They could not get it. And thanks to George and this team, she got a pacemaker. Here's a letter from a doctor. Dear Dr. Eagle, my name is Kashwal Tiwari. I'm a cardiac surgeon in Nepal. I'm writing to you for your help. Please get me some pacemakers for poor patients in Nepal. For Irene Oberlin, seeing a couple hundred Korean refugees in desperate need identified a window to a world that's desperate for recognition, prayer, and medical supplies. Cardiovascular disease kills more humans in this world than any other disease. 26% of all human beings die of cardiovascular disease. My Heart, Your Heart is a little window into that world. But those pacemakers are going to lead us to those points where we can do even more. I love this quote. It's by Daniel Berrigan. It said, sometime in your life, hope that you might see one starved man, the look on his face when the bread finally arrives. Hope that you might have baked it or bought it or even kneaded it yourself. For that look on his face, for your meeting his eyes across a piece of bread, you might be willing to lose a lot or suffer a lot or even die a little. When I hold one of those used pacemakers in my hand, I know probably a human being has lost their life and is donating it to another human being in tremendous need. I want to thank you for the honor of sharing this story. Thanks for the privilege of letting me be one small piece in this global movement to relieve human suffering. I want to thank you for embracing our My Heart, Your Heart team and our Outcomes Research Lab and creating a home where we can do this. I want to thank you for dreaming big, like Irene Oberlin did 64 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, let today be another day when we found out why. Thank you.